Welcome to Digital Nation, your weekly journey around the best of local TV. Whether it's the discovery of a brand new species of dinosaur or a beautifully restored bridge, we reveal the things you just don't see anywhere else. This week we travel along the M8, the heart of Scotland's motorway system. We meet a group of filmmakers in Leeds who are Hollywood-bound after being nominated for an Oscar. And we hear from a boxing fan in Nottingham who's campaigning for a statue to honour his pugilist hero. Are you loving local? Then why not use the hashtag Digital Nation? Firstly, let's take the high road to Glasgow as we travel along the M8, now a historic piece of motorway, as it heralded motorway construction in Scotland. It's 50 years since the road that links Edinburgh and Glasgow was built. STV takes a ride with a very knowledgeable guide.
Before motorways were built, people basically lived and died in the one area. The growth of the motor car and the motorways being constructed as a result of that have resulted in people being much more willing to move about. You could easily go to Edinburgh and back from Glasgow a couple of times a day. 60, 70 years ago, that was probably pretty much unheard of. Glasgow and Edinburgh have always been particularly distinct cities, and they each have their own large conurbations around them. I would say that up until the motorway arrived, they were, particularly distinct. They weren't easily connected. This year's a special year for the M8 in that it's 50 years since the start of construction on the inner ring road section. So this year marks that 50th anniversary. At the time, urban motorway construction in Britain was unheard of, and it was a very new concept. It just happened to be that the consultant who they appointed had both spent considerable periods of time in the United States, so they had gained quite a lot of experience on urban motorway construction. And that's where you see a number of similarities. Slip roads going off on the right-hand side, for example, the opposite side from normal. That's just, one example of where it has its similarities. The railings used and the lighting used, it has that very period feel about it. It's not something that's been repeated in construction since. They were forward-thinking. The motorways themselves were designed for traffic levels in 1990 or the year 2000. Now today that would be unheard of. So they were thinking to the future and thinking, well, how can we build this and make it relevant 20, 30 years from now? The construction of the motorways in the city was as important as the railways when they had arrived a century before. So I suppose it's on a fairly similar scale to that. If you had taken someone 100 years before the railways and had shown them, they would have been amazed. And I see the motorways no different to that.
Now we head over to Cambridge to visit Must Farm, the site of a 3,000-year-old Bronze Age waterside dwelling, preserved by the fire and waterlogging of its ancient history. Archaeologists are uncovering animal and plant remains, as well as utensils. There's even an ex-resident's meal still in the pot.
The site itself is a river channel, 3,000 years old, and effectively what we've got here is a series of Bronze Age houses built over a watercourse. And what we see in the ground is the verticals, the stilts, of which their structures are built on. So there's a sense here that the structure was above the water, caught fire and collapsed. So their misfortune is our good fortune in the sense that the contents of their dwelling has been preserved within the watercourse.
The fire and the subsequent fall into the water has created a living situation frozen in time. Those who lived here had to evacuate the premises quickly and therefore left many of their utensils behind, even their last meal.
Well, the wonderful thing about Must Farm is that we're able to throw the whole palette of scientific techniques at the archaeology and recover an extraordinary amount of information, added to which, of course, the preservation conditions here, the combination of the catastrophic fire and the waterlogging means that materials, all the organic materials which on a dry land site would not survive, are perfectly preserved here. So it's a site of national and international importance.
We have animal bone assemblages from the site that are terrestrial, so we have sheep, pig, cow, horse, dog. We have plant remains that are wheat and barley. All these things are growing or being tended to on land, but these people themselves are living above water. So it's an interesting insight into a humanity that was existing 3,000 years ago that we hadn't imagined.
Ever dreamed of hitting the red carpet to soak up the glitz and glamour of the silver screen industry? A team of filmmakers from Leeds are doing just that with their short film, which was nominated for an award in the 2016 Oscars. Fingers crossed these Leeds locals will grab a gong in Hollywood this year.
I had no idea how it works with shorts. I hadn't really made one before. I had no idea how the festival circuit ran. I think a lot of people make a short trying to make a feature off the back of it, and it's almost like a short version of the feature, so people are saying, look what this could be. I didn't try and do that. I thought if I'm making a short, I'm making it for that format, so it's a self-contained story. Was I worried about it? Do you know what? I had no idea whether people will like it or not, and yeah, we hadn't. You just don't know, and you second guess yourself the whole time. I mean, I remember sitting in the edit going, "My God, is this actually any good?" I have no idea anymore. And that's one of the hardest things I think about people who work in film, that you're so close to something, being able to stand back and detach yourself from it. It's about two boys growing up during the Serbian occupation in the war, and although people might say it's a war film, it's actually about the relationship of two boys. And I've tried to relate the film to everybody in the world, because the way I thought was, well, everybody was 12 years old, everybody had a best friend.
I take it it's a bit different going for the Oscar. Am I wrong? Like, how does that conversation even begin?
I mean, well, we started applying for festivals, and then we got into our first world premiere at Aspen Film Festival in Colorado, which is one of the most prestigious short film festivals in the world. And we won the top 3 awards there, which is called an A-list festival, which means any A-list festival can qualify to become to apply to the Oscars. And then we applied for the Oscars, and then a few months later, we didn't really think of it, and we got shortlisted to the final 10. And then last Thursday, on the 14th, we got nominated to the final 5. So now we get to go to the Oscars and hopefully win.
On Digital Nation, we often show you the uniques and one-offs from around the country. In Birkenhead, a beautiful wooden covered Swiss bridge, the only one of its kind, was sadly vandalised. So the devastated residents stood up and took action, and they restored it to its original beauty.
The Swiss Bridge is one of the original features of Birkenhead Park and was built in 1847 when the park originally opened. With a span of 23 feet, it's considered to be unique, as it's the only covered wooden bridge in the country modelled on designs of wooden bridges in Switzerland. Late one summer's evening, this bridge was set alight by vandals, causing £20,000 worth of damage. Specialist materials and paint had to be commissioned to make good the repairs. Extra security measures have been introduced at the park since the arson attack on the Swiss Bridge, including a CCTV camera. Now the bridge is safe again for visitors to walk over.
Well, as you know, the bridge was, they were attacked by not nice people, and it took us a couple of months, but we're here. The bridge has now been restored. So, yes, it's been a really good ending to what wasn't a very nice story. People are more aware now that there are some people out there who do destroy things, and look what we've done. We've restored it in a couple of months with the help of everybody, so I think that says it all for the people in Birkenhead and the areas that come to visit from outside of Birkenhead. So the bridge is now open. Please come along and take a walk. Have a look, it looks great. So thank you, everybody.
Next, we visit the North Norfolk coast as Mustard TV takes a trip to a historic, life-saving lighthouse that recently celebrated a big old birthday. Haysborough Lighthouse is the only independently run lighthouse in the country, and fundraising for it often involves some rather unusual activities.
For the last 225 years, Haysborough Lighthouse has been warning sailors of the dangers off the North Norfolk coast. This month, it's celebrating that special anniversary after going into operation back in January 1791. The decision was taken to shut down many traditional lighthouses in the late 80s, but this one was saved by local people and is now run by the Haysborough Lighthouse Trust. Peter Martin's been the attendant here for the last 3 years and has to take the long trip up the 85-foot tower to keep it in working order. with the beam of light visible more than 15 miles out to sea.
They needed to protect the shipping from the Haysborough Sands, which run from here up to Cromer, because they were losing so many ships, and the loss of life was quite horrendous. The government then instructed Trinity House to put the lighthouses here.
Because it's independent, they do need to fund themselves, which means they have to pay for all the upkeep. Last autumn, a group of fundraisers, including the North Norfolk MP Norman Lamb, took on a zip-wire challenge from the top that raised over £30,000 to help pay for renovations to the stairs inside.
2, 1, off we go!
A lot of people remember how in the early 90s as well, the lighthouse was repainted by the Challenge Annika programme. It's even featured in music videos too, with it being the location for Ellie Goulding's song, The Writer. All that publicity helps bring in the visitors on their regular open days, but they do need a head for heights.
With the staircase being open, the fatal thing to do is to look over the edge of the stair rail and see the height, and that's when they freeze. But if they come down looking at the wall, then they're usually pretty okay.
And that's it for part 1. But before we leave you, it's quiz time. In which city was the world's first film made? Was it A, York, B, Leeds, or C, Plymouth? Join us in part 2 for the answer. Welcome back to Digital Nation. Before the break, we asked you, in which city was the world's first film made? And the answer is B, Leeds. Frenchman Louis Le Prince photographed what is thought to be the first piece of motion picture film in Leeds on the 14th of October, 1888. In 1939, Edinburgh, like other parts of the country, were affected by World War II aerial bombing. And in this next clip, People's historian Dan Gray explores some of the true accounts collected by local residents. Beginning with an almighty air battle over the Firth of Forth, the human stories unfold.
When we think of Luftwaffe bombs on Great Britain, we think perhaps of the Blitz in London or Clydebank or the flattening of cities like Coventry. What we don't often think of are attacks on Edinburgh. There's a perception perhaps that it got off lightly, that because it's next to the Firth of Forth, it was well defended from sea and air. In October of 1939, an almighty air battle raged on the Forth. Bullets strayed across into Portobello and Edinburgh. It was a sign of what was to come. This is Crewe Place in West Pilton, a neat, uniform street. Uniform except for the newer house with the flat roof behind me. At tea time on September the 29th, 1940, Mrs. MacArthur sat in the lounge of the building that was there. Elsewhere in the house were her two children, Ronald, 7, and Morag, who was 5. 20,000 feet in the sky, their fate was being decided. A lone German bomber, almost ready to return to the fatherland, dropped a bomb. As it whistled and shrieked, Mrs. MacArthur ran through the house to try and shield her children, but was blown into the garden upon impact. It took 2 hours to find Ronald's body beneath the rubble. Morag died shortly afterwards. She was buried the day before her 6th birthday. Tragically and emphatically, Hitler's war had arrived in Edinburgh.
When you're out and about, You don't normally expect to stumble across the remains of a dinosaur, let alone one that's been recently discovered as a brand new species. But that is exactly what happened to a lucky student in Portsmouth. That Solon went along to unearth the rare story.
Many paleontologists, scientists and amateur fossil hunters will spend lifetimes searching for dinosaur bones, scouring beaches and quarries around the world. Others, like Portsmouth University undergraduate Sam Davis, get lucky. Very lucky.
So in the summer, I went down to Penarth and to Avonmouth Point, and I went on the beach, and my first day of fieldwork, I was going up and down the beach, logging the different rock layers to put them in an order. And I found, I happened to be wandering past a lump of rock. I'd wandered past it a couple of times actually, and there was a bit of loose scree on the top where there'd obviously been a cliff fall, so some of the stuff had fallen over. And I noticed some brownish looking material, and I went, oh, that's quite strange, because most of this is quite light. So I went and I brushed this off, and I immediately saw bone. Got it home, and I sent a photo to my tutor, and he confirmed to me that it was part of the Welsh dinosaur that had been announced earlier that year.
Sam's extremely rare find turned out to be a key section of a whole new species of dinosaur that was only discovered in 2014 by fossil hunters at the same beach in Wales where Sam was doing his fieldwork. University of Portsmouth scientists had been busy analysing this new species, so it didn't take long for Sam's tutor to realise they were dealing with the same beast. The Dracoraptor is a very distant cousin of the T-Rex that lived at the beginning of the Jurassic period, some 215 million years ago. Perhaps the most incredible part of the story is that Sam only chanced upon the dinosaur foot because of a recent cliff fall that exposed the fossil. If he hadn't been on that beach at that time, the bones could have been washed away by the tide or crushed by another rockfall.
There's several ways to catch the attention for a charity, and in Lancashire, making it big, bold and eye-catching wasn't quite enough. Which is why cancer charities are saying keep on trucking to some dedicated drivers in a very brightly coloured vehicle. So, if you want to make the passers-by blink, you gotta think pink.
We came up with the idea about 12 months ago. We had some new vehicles coming, all Euro 6, and we had the idea of doing a pink truck to donate money for charities.
Everything's good, it's for a good cause. It's a worthwhile cause. Everybody knows somebody or they are suffering from cancer, so it's a bit of an honour really to be chosen to drive the truck.
Mark Stringfellow got quite a surprise when he heard about his new duties at work.
I got home one night and had a phone call off Chris, and I thought I was in trouble, but he said, would you like to drive this pink wagon? And obviously it was a no-brainer straight away. I wanted that truck. It was all good, everything was positive. People stopping me, taking pictures, asking, can I take a picture of your truck? It's like, yeah, brilliant.
I would hope over the next 12 months to generate between 10 and 15,000 to various local cancer charities.
When it comes to ingenuity and innovation, you just can't beat this creative kingdom we call home.
As a wise man once said, we didn't start the fire, but if you want to know who stopped it, look no further than Great Yarmouth and a man called George William Manby. Now, old George was inventions mad back in the early 19th century and had a go at designing an unsinkable ship and a rescue motor, with mixed results. But his finest hour came in 1813 when he took a copper vessel, packed it with 3 gallons of pearl ash, pumped in a load of compressed air, added a nozzle, and invented the Extinctor, the world's first modern fire extinguisher. Blazing! Proof once again that when it comes to creativity, innovation, and turning a bonfire into a non-fire, in Norfolk Mint.
The East Midlands has a fantastic, long and glorious sporting history. But when you think of sporting greats, you expect that local heroes will be duly honoured. So when a boxing fan from Nottingham found out that his own idol was lacking the recognition he deserved, he decided to do something about it.
Of all the famous names from Nottingham's past, Bendigo is perhaps not one that's remembered as well as others these days. In the 19th century, though, he was very much the Carl Froch of his day, winning fight after fight and rising to fame. Nowadays, there's little in the city to commemorate him besides this rather beaten statue above the building which used to be a pub bearing his name. Nonetheless, over 130 years after his death, there are those who've not forgotten him.
I think we should continue to celebrate people like Bendigo and not forget him, because he dominated his era. He did all that he could do, and he was the pride of Nottingham, and that should be spoken about forever. He attracted crowds of up to 15,000 in the Market Square, which then, in that sort of sport, was unheard of.
William Thompson, later known as Bendigo, grew up right here in Sneinton. Born into poverty, he had no fewer than 20 siblings, and at the age of 15, after the death of his father, he was sent to the Nottingham workhouse. Even so, he developed well and went on to become one of the greatest boxers of his age. And it's because of feats like that it's felt that this statue simply isn't enough. Since it was first erected, the statue has had to be restored, notably the all-important fists, which the weather and years had almost completely eroded. Even with it restored, though, it's been noted the statue doesn't properly reflect the famous southpaw boxing stance which Bendigo is credited with inventing. More than anything else, though, Ryan feels that it simply isn't prominent enough, and instead wants a bronze statue, similar to that of Brian Clough, in the city centre.
He should be in the city centre where he belongs.
While the campaign is gaining momentum on Facebook, though, it could be several years away. And so for now, the man himself will have to be content looking out on the city from his perch in Sneinton.
In Sunderland, Dominic Wilcox has teamed up with a group of creative designers to turn children's imaginative inventions into real-life products. So prepared to be wowed by a very technical tennis ball, a magic hat and some super slippers, all dreamed up by the dinky Da Vincis and tiny Teslas of tomorrow's world.
This is a technological tennis ball.
Right.
So this is by Kai Roundtree, age 10. And he's called this a super fast tennis ball. So you switch it on. There's a little screen comes on here, and you can turn this dial to adjust the speed of the tennis ball. Then you press that in, goes green, and you can adjust the power of the tennis ball. And then you can play tennis at whatever speed you've set.
That's amazing. So how old is this little chap lad?
He's only 10.
10.
Nice drawing. And they made this at the Fab Lab in Sunderland, and yeah, it works a treat.
So did he discuss then what sort of encouraged this thought? You know, is he a tennis player himself? And what made him think of, I don't know, I want to make this tennis ball that'll go at exactly the speed I'm telling it to?
Yeah, maybe he just wanted to either slow down the tennis, you know, or to speed it up. I don't know, maybe he's an expert. Maybe he's an expert tennis player, really wants to push his tennis abilities to the limit, maybe.
He's going to trick his teacher in PE, that's what he's going to do. And when you get such quirky ideas like this and like other ones I can see dotted around, how did you make a decision of all the sort of the inventions that you had in? How did you decide which ones to make? Or are you hoping to make all of them? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I went through all of the 600 ideas, then I picked out about 60 that I thought were the more interesting ones. Then I showed them all to the makers, and then they chose the ones that they were interested in.
Then you've gone through 600. You must be going crazy by now. But have you got a favourite one that stood out?
That's so difficult on television. I think all the children's inventions were wonderful.
All of them are marvellous. Well, I can see a hairbrush over there and a pair of slippers, so I know where I'm going next.
And that completes our tour of the best of local. If our stories have tickled your fancy, then don't forget there's tons more you can see by visiting each of the local TV channels' websites. Or why not pop to bbc.co.uk/Digital Nation for previous episodes. So, until next week, goodbye.